Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. How desperate is Big Brother to get your consent to be governed? So desperate that they're putting mailers in people's mailboxes that are shaming them, saying your neighbor will know if you voted or not. Shaming them, scaring them, using tactics that we see from debt collectors, trying to entice them to go and vote. And if you haven't noticed, all these signs for voting, all these celebrities who are just saying vote, a lot of whom you know what side they're going to vote for, are just still telling you, make sure you vote. See, they're more concerned not even with you voting for one communist versus the other. They're more concerned that you consent. And that's why these letters are appearing in people's mailbox, these vaguely threatening letters that people are opening and they're saying to themselves, I'm being watched. My neighbor's data on how often they vote and register to vote is now being shown to me and told to me. Is this legal? Well, technically they'll tell you that it is legal because of course they've made it legal for you to go and find out who's a registered voter or not so that they can use tactics like this at a time where both political parties are so psychologically unhinged and in such a deep psychosis that they actually consider you a bigger enemy to them than the actual opposite political party, the same opposite political party that they don't want to live among anymore, that they would have probably like to do harm to. They look at you and they say, how in the world can you not pick a side? In fact, they don't just want you to pick a side, they want you to pick their side. And they're so in a psychosis that they think that this election is going to come down to your vote. And in fact, it's going to be told to all of us that it does come down to a handful of votes so that people like me and you, of course, are shamed, are guilted, and become an enemy of the state. But if you're not familiar with what's going on, I'll show you some of the news clips that are airing in affiliate news media markets. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, in the Constitution, when it says that all men are created equal, it means that there's no natural rulers among the people. Whereas if you're born somewhere else, you might be born into a society where there's a monarchy, where there's a king, where there's a queen to rule over you. In America, the Constitution states that all men are created equal, and that means that there's no natural rulers among the people. Now, there's truth to that, and there's also not truth to that. The truth to that is that there are no natural rulers among us based on the rights that we have. However, the entire system is completely hijacked and corrupted, and it's based on using mind control manipulation into empowering you into thinking that you're electing people who are being hand-selected in what is really a monarchy. So no one, not a king, not a queen, was born with the right to rule over any of us without our consent. And that's why getting you to vote is so important to the system itself to continue to exist. This is what's going on in neighborhoods across America right now, shaming you, scaring you, using debt collecting tactics to get you to consent.
We're hearing concerns from some voters in this area about a so-called voting report card that's arriving in the mail.
Yeah, some homeowners say they feel it's an invasion of privacy, but the organization behind all of this says it's completely legal. So KCRA 3's Lizzie Mitri decided to get in there and to get the facts.
A viewer from Granite Bay reached out to KCRA after getting one of these voting report cards in the mail. She says she got this letter that showed not only her voting history in the past 4 elections, but the history of 2 of her neighbors. The mailer doesn't show who she voted for, just if she voted or not. And the letter says we will be reviewing these records after the election to determine whether or not you joined your neighbors in voting. The viewer says even though she knows the data is public, she still felt like this was intimidating. And it turns out viewers across the country are getting these report cards. And late Thursday night, the Attorney General of Maryland issued a cease and desist letter ordering the organization to stop sending out the letters there. Our sister station in Baltimore spoke with the CEO of the Center for Voter Information about these concerns from voters.
I can understand that the language might be off-putting. And in fact, the most important thing anybody could do if they feel that way is to recycle the letter and then go and vote.
The nonprofit sent a response to the cease and desist letter, saying in part it is not intimidating or threatening to promote voting by discussing neighborhood participation rates. Here in California, groups can request voter registration data for all voters for a fee of $100. That information does not include how they voted, only whether or not they voted. CVI tells us they use public records in California to help voters understand their voting records.
Both parties are trying to get the rest of their supporters to the polls, and one party even willing to shame people into voting. So is it working? NBC2 Chief Political Correspondent Dave Elias shows us.
So what if I told you that I just got off of the phone with your neighbor who told me that you hadn't voted yet, and your neighbor knows because they've been keeping a close eye on whether or not you vote? Well, that's exactly what this ad is claiming, and it's creeping many people out.
And in my mail this morning, I immediately shredded into 4 pieces.
Ann Yort is talking about this flyer, warning her neighbors are watching to see if she votes.
She doesn't look like our kind of people.
Mind your own business.
She calls the Republican Party flyer offensive.
And in putting that out that neighbors are watching, that makes me more put a sign for Harris Walls on my lawn.
What's the matter with you? All of a sudden I'm married to a peeping Tom. Spying on people, sticking your nose in everybody's business.
That bewitched neighbor, yeah, Mrs. Kravitz. Oh, that's very good, yeah.
But not everyone is laughing.
It's nobody's business. Nobody should be pressured to vote.
Could this be considered shaming voters?
It certainly is. I've done mailers similar to that, and we in-house called them shame mailers.
Republican political consultant Terry Miller argues it works.
And there was actually a study done on what's called the social pressure mailings, and that's what this is. And in 2008, that study came out and showed that it helps increase voter turnout.
And for me, it's just another reminder, hey, get out there and go vote.
Other voters, though, disagree.
Makes me not want to vote.
So far, about 60% of Southwest Florida voters have cast a ballot.
Gladys, will you stay away from that window?
Whether neighbors are watching or not.
All right, Dave, I can sense the question on the minds of some viewers after seeing that story. How could your neighbor know if you actually voted or not?
Well, you know, it is public record, and the flyer clearly states here, Peter, who you vote for is a secret, but whether or not you vote is public record.
But up first tonight, those so-called voter report cards. How would you feel if you opened up a letter to find your voting record right there in your hand? That's happening to people living in different parts of the DMV. Alexis Wainwright is looking into whether these mailings are even legal.
We are hearing several concerns from voters in several neighborhoods here in Maryland and also in Virginia after receiving letters with not just their voting records, but also records of their neighbors.
Originally, I thought it was official and took one look and said, well, no.
Leslie Miles said she received this letter in the mail Tuesday with her personal information and whether she voted in the past 2 presidential and past 2 midterm general elections.
And I know that what's behind it is probably that there is definitely an impact of peer pressure. People are more motivated to vote if they know that their neighbors have voted.
The Voter Participation Center and Center for Voter Information are behind these, quote, voting report cards. Miles says she wasn't upset with it, but
I understand the motive behind it is to sort of get people feeling like, oh, everyone else around me is voting. What's wrong with me? I'm being a slacker. I better go vote. And I have already voted, and my husband has already voted. I mean, we're not really the targets for this.
Meanwhile, on Nextdoor, neighbors have expressed concerns about this being creepy and uncalled for.
I can't imagine it's beneficial. I can't imagine it's worth the cost and the time.
A woman who didn't want to be identified says in her letter her information was not accurate and doesn't want that spread around.
It said that I had not voted in 2020, which I absolutely did vote.
Some even saying it's potential voter intimidation.
If I were a person with a more recognizably different non-American sounding name, it would probably freak me out a little to see the fact that you voted is public. I would feel a little targeted.
To be clear, who you vote for will always be private, but whether you voted or not and whether you are registered in a state is publicly available. Miles says she's surprised by this and thinks it would be a better tactic if it was done in person while canvassing.
I do canvassing. I try to get people to vote, and this is the first time that I've seen this.
Alexis Wainwright, WUSA 9.
So it's all about the consent to be governed, and I'll do a deeper video probably before the election on it. for people out there so they have an understanding of the Constitution. But I had to show you this at the end of the video. Of course, this woman who's talking about how it's a bullying tactic, but she also is an activist that goes around trying to get people to vote, how she has that red bracelet on her wrist, which just sums it all up, doesn't it? In a nutshell, this American experiment that we are currently living in here in America. So these tactics that they're using are desperate. People should be looking at how hell-bent they are on getting you to actually vote without even telling you what side to vote for as the same exact thing that we saw during the outbreak, right? People started to get suspicious during the outbreak because the government started telling people, because they were so desperate, they started seeing that not many people were scared enough of the fear propaganda out there. All the stories about overcrowded hospitals, all the stories about how many people were dying. Remember, they had the little ticker on the screen and they would update it on how many people died. And people were looking around and they were going about their day-to-day life. And they're going to the store and they weren't seeing people dead on the store at the grocery, or they weren't seeing people dead in the malls or in Walmart. And they were saying, yeah, it's not that scary out there. And then when they turned the box on, all they heard was scare, scare, scare. And they were kind of comparing the two and deciding what they wanted to do. And they said, some said, all right, I'll go and I'll poison myself. And other people said, I'll just take my chances on my own with my own immune system and all these other things. Common sense logic, of course. And then the government said, all right, this isn't working. They're not scared enough. How about we bribe them? How about we come out in the open and we say, we'll give you debit cards, $100 Visa gift cards. We'll give you free meals at McDonald's. Heck, in your local town, we'll even give you free lap dances. In some places, they were giving out free bottles of booze and free shots. They were giving it all out, folks. And some people started to say, all right, this is a little bit weird to me. Because if the people who are going and getting it are going to be immune, then what do they care if everybody else has it? That was the first light bulb. The second was, you know what? When the government starts giving stuff away for free, I should be suspicious because they don't give anything away for free, right? And we know that they don't care about our health, or we would have universal health care. We'd have all these other things, right? In fact, we know they don't care about our health because every day when we look up in the sky and we see this big haze coming out of the back of these jets that are flying above us, these airplanes that are flying above us, we automatically can say, yeah, they don't really care about us, do they? Because they're poisoning us every day. Or we look at the side of any food that gets passed by the FDA and ends up in a grocery store and we see the 9,000 chemicals on each box, we can automatically say they don't care about our health. So people were having this light bulb go off and this sound in their ear that was going ding, 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 right? Now let's fast forward here to now, 2024, 4 years later. And are you noticing the pattern with how obsessed people are to get you to actually participate in this? How obsessed they are to get your consent to be governed? Because that's what it's about. Notice around you all of these organizations, these corporations, since America is a corporation, from the NFL to the NBA to Coca-Cola. Doesn't matter if it's a lib organization or a conservative one. They're all putting out these signs about don't forget to vote. Make sure you vote. Because not only does it bring you deeper into the psychosis if you emotionally invest in this, if you emotionally vote, and then they tell you, well, your vote may have been lit on fire, or, your vote may have not have counted because we allow people from a third world country to come and vote, and we counted their vote and didn't count your vote, right? You get emotionally sucked into the psychosis. But what people don't realize is that they're giving their consent to be governed. You're not born into something in America where you're automatically supposed to be governed by certain people. It's your consent that is needed to be governed. And this entire system has been set up in our minds. This psychosis that they've built in our minds. This is part of the game. This is part of MK Ultra. This is part of the American experiment. All this stuff is being done on us psychologically. That's what it's done. That's what it is. Can we convince them to do this? Can we convince them to do that? And that's what they've done over the last 80 years or so. They've convinced people to do what they want them to do. They've convinced people through mind control, empowering you, making you think that these are your decisions, convincing you through social engineering of these trends and how to go along with or what to follow, right? What is a man? What is a woman? All these things that people question now, all done through mind control. It's a massive mind control experiment. But your consent is needed to be governed. And think about through history, of course, in America, real history, some of the stories that you've heard about, you know, Waco's or Ruby Ridge, what you've heard about those, of course, aren't true. You see, when groups of people get together and realize what could potentially actually be going on and they remove themselves from this situation, well, the government tries to remove you, which is part of the problem here in America, is that the media controls everybody's perception of things. So if 20,000 of us were to move to a state and form our own community there, where we say, well, we won't bother anybody, we don't care, we don't want to harm anyone, we just want to have a little religious community or a little community of people who follow Christ, and we're going to farm ourselves and do these things. They're not going to allow you to do that. In fact, the first thing that would occur is the media would air reports that 20,000 extremists moved into an area and their plan was to overthrow the government. And then everybody out there would say, well, we can't have that. We should go after these people, because that's how easy this American experiment works. They believe the news is real. Every time they turn it on, they think they're getting told the actual truth, and they're getting told nothing but lies. I mean, Satan is the prince of the power of the air. And what do they call the television? The airwaves. And what is Satan? What is Satan? The father of lies? A liar and a murderer from the beginning, right? So the tactics that they're using, like I said earlier, is no different than a debt collector. They're shaming people. Should this be legal? Well, you hear people's responses to it in the clips. I mean, people feel like they're getting bullied, and then they go, well, you know what? I'm more likely to maybe vote for the opposite political party. Well, that doesn't matter to them as long as you go and you vote, right? Because, of course, it was Trump and Vance, some of the flyers that were going out in the mail in Florida. So some people who are undecided voters, or some people who just said, I don't like either of them, I might not vote, right? But still think that the system is real, of course. We'll go cast a ballot, or maybe they'll cast it for an independent, which is the same difference as consenting to be governed, is it not? Going there and saying, I'm going to pick the lesser of two evils. I'll pick the third less of the two evils. It's my obligation to be governed, apparently, in the United States of America. But what's funny about all this stuff, when you look at it, you think about it, and you say, yeah, you know, the debt collectors do the same thing. They send something in the mail, they call you up and they harass you, right? They call you up and they shame you. Oh, you're not going to pay. You're not going to pay what you owe. But 99.9% of Americans don't even realize that, you know, it's not a crime if you don't pay off your debt. Now, I'm not telling you whether you should feel obligated to pay a debt off or not to a bank. I mean, you could think about that yourself about, well, what's your obligation to a bank with the control that they already have over all of us. But most people think that they get in credit card debt that they can end up in jail. I've talked to people who actually think that by not paying their credit card off, that American Express can throw them in a prison cell. When that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, they could take you to court, but the odds of American Express sending a lawyer to court are zero. You just have to show up probably in court and dispute it, and dispute the fees that were charged, because none of it's legal. It's all psychological. Oh, they're charging you interest, they're charging you fees, they're charging whatever they want. They're making up numbers and telling you that you have to pay, but you don't. In fact, people are more afraid of that than they would be of an actual bookie. But the difference is that you should be probably more scared of a bookie. You know, if you make an illegal bet to somebody and then you decide you don't want to pay the bookie, well, the bookie could come and cause harm to you. Bank of America or Wells Fargo, they're not going to send somebody to your home with a billy club. They're just not. They're going to try to use fear. They're going to try to take you to court. They're going to try to use terminology that they think you won't understand so that you, of course, end up consenting to pay them back, right? It's no different here. Basic fear tactics, basic fear-mongering, basic shaming and guilting of people. And the left and the right are no different from one another because they're completely clueless to what the Constitution says and what their actual rights are as civilians in the United States of America. But they don't care about their actual rights, even though they scream that they do. They care about you playing in their game. And their game is, of course, your consent to be governed by a bunch of corporations and psychopaths who want to turn you into their own personal slaves, where they monitor and track your every breath, every movement, every fart that you possibly make, because that's what this is all leading towards coming out of this fake election. I thank everybody for being here. This should just be more proof for anybody out there. Anybody out there that you know and you're saying to them, you know, I don't know about this voting thing. I don't want to consent. And they go, oh, you got to vote. It's your obligation to vote. Maybe they should start thinking about the comparison I made between how desperate they were to get you to go and get a potion to getting you to vote. Because the majority of the stuff here with getting you to vote, they don't even care who you vote for. Because the vote, they know that the vote itself isn't counted. It's not real. It's part of the mind control experiment. They just want you to consent to be governed. That's what's most important to them. I thank you for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.